going to be looking ahead to England men's 3-test series against Sri Lanka. Gets underway at Old Trafford on Wednesday. So England, they won that series against West Indies 3-0, but of course they're going to be without their captain. Ben Stokes out for the rest of the summer. That hamstring injury he picked up playing for the Northern Superchargers in the 100. It means that Ollie Pope will be captaining England for the first time. But last time here on 5 Live Cricket, we spoke about Ben Stokes' absence. But Stephen Finn is somebody that's played alongside him. This is going to be a very different England Test side, and it's going to have to be Bazball, but slightly different.
Yeah, Bazball Mark II, isn't it? It's going to be interesting to see how Pope and McCullum work together. You sort of feel like it's going to be like Ben Stokes light, maybe. He'll be looking to captain, I'd imagine, in the same vein and play on the front foot, and the messaging will be very, very consistent. But yeah, an exciting week for Ollie Pope. He's sort of been earmarked, hasn't he, for this England captaincy for a little while. He'd been promoted to be the vice captain over the last year or so, and he's played in that manner, especially this season here in the UK. And it's going to be a fascinating week to see how he gets on with the captain's armband on.
Paul, a captain in cricket has such significance, but I think particularly Ben Stokes, given the way that he has led this team over the last couple of years, I mean, it will be a very different environment. He is there and around the squad, but out on the field.
Yeah, and that's where, he's not only has he led the team with how he's made changes tactically, how he's changed the game when it's needed changing, he's not let it settle, but it's also the way that Stokesy plays the game. And I think the important thing for Ollie Pope is he doesn't try and captain as Ben Stokes Mark II. I think he has to captain in his own way. He has to captain authentically, and he has to do the job how he wants to do it. And it's intriguing that Ben will be around the group. And I think that the only danger of that is you could end up with almost 3 leaders. And I think as long as there's clear, markings between actually once the game starts, it's Popey that's running the team, because as a coach, you can't interfere too much once the game's up and running, as much as you want to sometimes. And I think it'd be really important that Stokesy doesn't try and interfere too much, but actually maybe he's just in the background and not too much front of house.
Alex, that team dynamic and how they manage that is going to be challenging.
Yeah, of course it is, and I think a huge opportunity for Ollie Pope to show what he's about and how he's going to captain this side if the opportunity comes further along down the line, and a new vice captain as well. It almost feels like it's this new England team, doesn't it? Matthew Potts back into the 11, and then you've also got the youngsters. You've got Bashir, the off spinner, who's going to play, and I think it's a very exciting time for the youngsters of English cricket. And if you're Ollie Pope here, you're looking at what this opportunity is, but you're also looking at the future as well.
Absolutely. Alex, I couldn't agree more with you. And I don't think there's been a better time for someone like Ollie Pope to step up and captain the team. The team is well organised, it's well set, they know what they're trying to do. And if ever there's been a time for someone who's not had a great deal of captaincy experience to captain this England team, this is the time to do it. I think this is a brilliant time for Popey to take over, because, you never know with any England captain, and Finney's played under quite a few, but you never know when people take the captaincy on, you never quite know how they're going to be. And, it doesn't matter whether you've had experience of captaincy or not. Captain England is very different. And I think for Ollie Pope, this has come at a brilliant time. England playing good cricket, well organised, well set. Fantastic time for him to take over the job.
Yeah, he's only captained a handful of T20s and one first-class match in 2021, Steve. But what about him as an individual, Ollie Pope? We'll get on to Ben Stokes and that injury and everything around that shortly. But Ollie Pope as a character.
Look, Ollie Pope is someone who's been earmarked for it for a while, but it's going to be interesting to see how he takes on that responsibility. I do think it's important actually for captains to have experienced ups and downs in their career so they can make themselves relatable as a player. And Ollie is someone who struggled at times through his Test career, but come through the other side of that. He's promoted, or he's put his hand up to go and bat at number 3, which are the sort of credentials that you want from a leader, to say that he wants to go and take that responsibility. So, yeah, all the signs are there. But as Fabi says, until you've got the captain's blazer on and you're walking out there to the middle, you don't actually know how that's going to affect someone's performance. The best captains don't let the captaincy and the decision-making and the burden that can come with that affect their performance.
I was interested to see the quotes he gave about the captaincy. He said, I said I'd make the right decision sometimes and be unlucky, and that I'd make the wrong decision and sometimes get lucky. Sometimes having that kind of mindset, being at peace with the decision that you've made and sticking with it is the way to go. And that is, Alex, very much the Ben Stokes, Brendan McCullum mentality.
Yeah, of course. I don't think there's a better time for him. You know, you've got a coach, you've got a captain that's injured that is just going to give you so much freedom. They know that it's the first time he's doing it. You know, they know he's very, very inexperienced when it comes to captaincy, but he's going to make mistakes. He's going to get things wrong. He's also going to be a little bit rogue. We know how Ben Stokes captains, and he said he's going to be very similar. He said that he's going to be, you know, the Baz Ball or whatever we want to call it. And I think you don't have a coach and a captain like those two and the success they've had, and you know, without making mistakes and things like that. And I think Ollie Pope has got free rein to almost go and just learn on the job.
Paul, talk us through what significance a captain will have out in the middle in terms of decision making. What are the conversations you would be having as a coach, saying to that captain and the plans you'd be coming up with, and then what is he doing out there in the middle?
Well, the two prep days, there's almost a phasing in of the captain and phasing out of the coaches. So, you know, the first day, the coaches set the day up, they set the practice up, they do a lot of team meetings, you chat about the tactical side of it, you look at the opposition. But by day two of the prep, you're actually handing over to the players to get on with it. And it's a pretty casual day the day before, as in they do what they want in terms of their practice. And by the time the game starts, it's the captain that takes over. And it's the captain that makes the key decisions. That's the player that everybody looks to. And that's why, you know, it's important that Ollie is his own person. He does how he wants to do it because, you know, Brendan, I don't think Brendan with his experience would be wanting to interfere too much. And occasionally, you know, the coach might say a few words at one of the breaks just to give the captain a bit of relief from having to keep doing all the talking. But ultimately, it's about the senior players and the captain. They make the key decisions. They're the ones out there. It's not like, you know, under 11s cricket where you might send a message out with the 12th man on a bit of paper and ask them to move third man or whatever. There have been times when even me as a coach, you might want to wave on and move a field or change a bowler. But as hard as it is, because you're desperate to be involved, the captain has to make the key decisions. And then your job is to analyse the day with the captain and do it discreetly. And then for one of either the captain or the coach to give a little bit of feedback. But it's all about the captain. Once the game starts, it has to be about the captain. And I think that's one thing that we see with Stokes and McCullum. Stokes is the leader. He's at the front of the house. McCullum sits in behind it. A bit like Morgan and Bayliss, one of the best partnerships we've had in English cricket recently. Trev sat at the back. Owen was at the front. Everybody knew the leader was at every given time.
So what about Ben Stokes then, Alex? It felt as though he was absolutely in the right place. Fit again, bowling again. Everything was looking as it should do. And then, would you believe it, he gets injured, misses the rest of the summer.
I know, it's devastating, isn't it? And there was so much hype around him joining back up with the Northern Superchargers. It was, you know, it was destined that he was going to get a first baller, wasn't it? We just sort of all knew it was going to happen. You know, he's been the talk of the town for so long. He's back with the Northern Superchargers. He wants to play. He wants to go out and have some fun. Gets a first baller and then blows his hamstring at Old Trafford. And you just think, you know, he wants to be playing cricket. We want him to be playing cricket. The fans want to watch him. He's not done his hamstring because he was playing in the 100. You know, he could have been running at home in the local park doing a running session to get ready for the test match and could have blown his hamstring. It's just such a shame, isn't it? Because he's been so injured. He's been through it all. His knee surgery, he got himself fit. He's back bowling before any of us thought he would have been. And it's a real shame because, you know, you just felt like he was just starting to get going again with being that all-rounder and that world-class all-rounder that we all remember him as being.
Paul, how will he be coping with that frustration, do you think?
Yeah, he'll be annoyed because he's worked, you know, as Alex said, he's worked so hard to get himself fit, to get himself strong. We love seeing him play, you know, and Alex, again, he's absolutely spot on. It's not about the 100. You know, I love the fact that he was playing in the 100. I love to see all the best players playing the 100. It's been fantastic for English cricket and I hope he continues to do so. But in terms of Ben, the biggest concern for me is not the captaincy, it's more the balance that he brings to the team. You know, and I've got no doubt that Smith and Wokes at 6 and 7 can do the job, but the balance that Ben brings to the team, batting, bowling and fielding, driving the team forward on the field, never asking him to do things that he wouldn't do himself, bowls long spells, bowls wicket-taking spells. That's the bit for me that England are going to really miss. I'm not as concerned about the captaincy. I'm more concerned about the balance he brings to the team and the skill level that he brings to the team. That's the bit that worries me.
Steve, we saw this all of last summer when he could only bowl in limited spells in that Ashes series. And he is two players in one, and the best all-rounders will do that for a side. And so England bring in Matthew Potts for this game, Dan Lawrence at the top of the order in place of the injured Zach Crawley. But it's that middle order that's had to shuffle around. And that's the bit that makes it so awkward when you lose a player like Stokes.
Well, yeah, it's led to England playing 5 bowlers, hasn't it? And you're trying to balance the team in some regard. And Chris Woakes is an outstanding player, and I think he's very, very capable of batting at number 7. But there's no doubt that having him at 8 just makes that team look far more balanced or better balanced. So yeah, losing a player like Stokes does leave you scrambling somewhat. Maybe when you're looking at other all-rounders in the country that could have fulfilled that role, could Sam Curran have come back into the test team to do that batting at 6 and bowling you 10, 15 overs a day? But they've opted for the 5 out-and-out bowlers. They've opted for the guys who've been in and around the squad for the last year or so, or the last 2 years, with the exceptions of Gus Atkinson, who's burst onto the scene. So, it will just have a slightly different feel about it, this team, and that's exactly what Ben Stokes brings, as both Paul and Alex have said, that balance and knowing that he is always there as the bedrock of the team in general. He'll be missed, but Sri Lanka, I think if you were to face a team at the moment who, without your star all-rounder, it might be them.
Alex, what about that decision to go for the extra bowler rather than bolstering that batting lineup?
Yeah, look, I think it gives them a few more options. It gives Ollie Pope a few more options as well. I think it gives him a little bit of leeway in case somebody's not going too well, or I think it just. Look, I think when you've seen Sri Lanka play against the Lions last week and they didn't play too well, the Lions, a relatively young side, dominated them. I think England, they're backing themselves to go with, the batter shy, I guess, and go with the bowler. Just
going to say, I think it's also a nod towards the fact that I think Sri Lanka's batting is stronger than their bowling, from what I can tell in this series. And I think it's a nod towards the fact that they anticipate maybe, because the weather has generally been good. I mean, I'm not sure the forecast that great in Old Trafford, but the weather has been good, so the pitches will be good and should be good. It's a nod towards they might need those extra bowlers over the course of the Test series, as opposed to needing the batting if their bowling was the stronger suit.
Paul, we'll get on to Sri Lanka and their credentials shortly, but what about Jamie Smith? Up to 6, he made a big impact in that West Indies series. He's somebody that seems to play with total freedom, but there is a little bit more responsibility when you're as high as 6, and you've got to be a little more cautious. It's not quite as buccaneering, perhaps, a position as batting at 7.
Really like him as a player. He comes across as a very level-headed and calm young cricketer. I was very impressed with his keeping. There was an awful lot of talk about the fact he hasn't kept wicket a great deal, but I thought his keeping was sensational. From the point of view, you hardly noticed him. He did the job. He reminded me so much of Sangakkara and Dhoni. Nothing flash, never missed a chance, very consistent with everything that he caught. And that was the bit I really enjoyed about him. His batting, I don't think we've got to worry. I mean, he could easily bat 5 for England. I think he's that good. I think he's got fantastic technique. I was very impressed with how he played in terms of going through the gears. Sometimes you watch, players come in to make their debut and they feel like they've got to go, hell for leather to start with. I thought he showed a lot of responsibility. I thought he judged his off stump and the bounce of the ball brilliantly. I've got no doubt that he can bat at 6. I think he is perfectly placed to bat there at 6.
He was impressive, Vinny, wasn't he, in that West Indies series?
Well, it's his versatility, isn't it? I think Farbs talks about him being able to bat up and down the order, and because he's done that and he's had to sort of find a way to fit into that Surrey team when he was young, they've been studded with superstars and people who are playing for England. So to get into that team, he's had to be versatile with where he's batted, and because they've been missing players during the T20 competition, he's moved up and down the order in T20s as well, which has given him the experience of being able to up the tempo of his innings. And that was what was most impressive about his batting in that West Indies series, was his ability to play with good technique with a straight bat against some good bowling. Jayden Seales, who Farbs worked with at Sussex earlier this year, is an outstanding bowler. Shamar Joseph, Alzari Joseph, he had good bowling to contend with there, and he played it sensibly and cautiously and played the situation really well. But then as soon as he needed to put his foot down and bat with the tail, which is almost exactly why he's been picked to be the wicketkeeper and bat at 7 when Ben Stokes is fit, is his ability to go into fifth gear and stay there with the tail and be able to marshal that. That's what sets him apart from the other wicketkeeper batters in the country for me.
Alex, what about Harry Brook as the vice-captain this side? We saw his first home test century in that West Indies series. I mean, we've spoken about Ollie Pope's leadership opportunity. Harry Brook, this is a big chance.
Massive chance. We've seen him captaining the Northern Superchargers in the 100 just gone, and I was really impressed with him, to be completely honest. I love the fact, he could just put a short leg in for one ball because he fancied it. You don't often see it in white ball cricket, let alone the 100, but it just shows that he's brave. He wants to do those things. He wants to unsettle batters, and I have no doubt that Harry Brook is a future captain, and now he's just got the opportunity to sit behind Pope and give his 20p when needed, give his advice, and I think he's a very switched on cricketer. We know how good he is. I also think over the last couple of weeks he's really shown his cricket brain as well.
Yeah, and this is an interesting side of all of this, Paul, is there is all of this talk about what the future will be, not just in the red ball side, but the white ball side in terms of that leadership group. And if Ollie Pope and Harry Brook can have a good time of it over the next 3 weeks, they're going to show an awful lot of people exactly how the leadership might look for England in all formats of the game going forward.
Completely agree, and I completely agree with Alex. I was actually watching the game when Brookie was captain. I think it was at Headingley, and the short leg went in. I think Alex was actually commentating at the time, and I thought, blimey, that's fantastic. For a young bloke just to stick someone in there, even if it was for one ball, it showed that he's got a very good cricket brain. He's always had an excellent cricket brain. I know Stokesy gave him stick earlier on in the year about maybe his level of intelligence, but his cricket intelligence is top quality, because Brookie could easily go back at Stokesy, vice versa on that one. But their cricket, it doesn't matter about their actual intelligence. What it means is about understanding the game and playing the game. And that's what I think you're absolutely right. And I like Pope. Pope has grown as a character, grown as a player, as Finney talked about the responsibility he's been given. But Brook, I think Brook genuinely could be a fantastic captain, and he's really shown that. I've really enjoyed watching him in the 100, and I think he's done things that I've thought, yeah, actually, that's pretty impressive. I wasn't expecting him to do that, but it's actually, he moves the game forward very much in the way that Stokes does exactly the same.
England have also lost their opener Zach Crawley for the remainder of the home season due to a fractured finger. That was in the final test match against West Indies. It means that Dan Lawrence will open the batting for England during the upcoming series, and he's been speaking to the BBC's chief cricket writer, Stefan Shemild.
Dan Lawrence, England opener. How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. To be honest, about a couple of months ago, it's not something I necessarily had on my radar, but I've been waiting a long time to get an opportunity for England, and if that meant batting 8, 9, 10, 11, I would have taken it. So, yeah, opening's really exciting, and I can't wait to get going.
You mentioned how long you've had to wait for your opportunity. You've obviously been in the squad and in and around the squad, both at home and abroad. Probably got quite a lot of experience of carrying the drinks. How's it been having to wait for your chance like this?
Yeah, it's obviously really exciting every time you do get in an England squad, and I've been waiting patiently for my opportunity. I've been lucky enough to be involved in an environment which has been great fun on and off the pitch, so it hasn't been all doom and gloom. I've learnt a lot from watching the boys about how they approach the game and how they go about things, so I'm just going to try and incorporate a little bit of that into my game and just enjoy it.
I guess the time while you've been watching them, while you've been in the squad, is a time when England have been playing a style of cricket that really suits the way you play, and maybe when you first got into the England side it wasn't necessarily always like that. Has it been strange? Have you been thinking, God, I really wish I'd be in this side right now because it'd suit me down to a T?
Yeah, I mean, playing for England's always been my number one goal in cricket, and obviously seeing the free-flowing nature of how the boys go and bat, it does suit up to my game. Yeah, there have been times where I wish I'd been out there, but I've been really happy for the lads who've been out there and performing really well for the last 2 years, and I understand that everyone's been in really good form and it's been really hard to get in, and it's taken a couple of years, but finally got my chance.
You opened a bit at the start of your first class career. You've been opening in white ball cricket, so it's not something that's completely alien to you.
No, not at all. I started opening a little while ago now, and then I've been up and down the order for the last few years. I think that's one of the biggest strengths of my game, is being fairly adaptable to whatever position I need to bat in. So opening, I haven't done it for a while, but I'm really excited to get out there with Ducky on Wednesday and hopefully put on a show.
How's it different to how you would normally approach both the way that you bat in a game and how you prepare?
I don't think it would change how I bat in the game at all. I think my style will suit will suit opening the batting. It's more just not having the weight before I go in. I think that might be quite a nice thing. Obviously, having not played for England for a while, is actually just strapping the pads on and going straight in instead of thinking and waiting and thinking about it. Yeah, it's obviously going to be a little bit different, but yeah, like I said, I'm just excited to get out there.
You've got your opportunity through an injury to Zach Crawley, and there might be a way of thinking, when Zach's fit again, he comes back in. But we've seen in the past when Harry Brook got his opportunity, the runs that he made almost made himself undroppable. Is that the way that you've got to go about this thing? Now look, I've got to make a really difficult decision for the selectors when everyone's fit.
Yeah, I'm not actually looking that far ahead, to be honest. I'm trying to take it day by day and game by game. I would obviously love to score loads of runs and give Baz a headache, but I fully understand that the top six for 18 months to 24 months have been fantastic, and I'm sure as soon as Zach's fit again, I'm sure he'll come back in. So yeah, I'm just trying to create an impression in these 3 weeks and just really try and enjoy it and not think about what's going to happen in the future and just embrace myself in this moment.
You've been in the squad, but you've not actually played under Ben and Brendan, and Ben's not playing in this series. He is going to be around, but is it going to be different under Ollie's captaincy?
I don't think it'll be hugely different. Obviously, Stokesy's such an impressive character, and Popey would have been watching him a lot over the last couple of years. I'm sure Popey's going to drive home a lot of the same messages that Stokesy tries to do. So I can't imagine it will change that much on the messaging side of things, and it'll be handy to have Ben around to help out everyone around the rooms.
That method's ingrained, isn't it? It has been over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think so. Baz and Stokesy have always encouraged us to try and entertain crowds and make people want to come and watch Test cricket again. So I'm sure the group are going to carry on doing that. Yeah, I can't imagine much is going to change over the next 3 weeks.
What's Ollie like as a captain? You're one of the few players that's actually played under him.
Yeah, he's very good. I don't think he's done a tremendous amount of it for Surrey, but he's obviously he's another very impressive character, and I'm sure he's going to take this week in his stride and really enjoy it. Popey's obviously been a very good player for England over the last couple of years, but I'm sure as a leader he'll be just as good.
Ben and Brendan have spoken a lot about looking to the future and possibly the Ashes in 18 months' time. For that reason, is Ben getting an injury? Obviously, you never want that to happen, but scenario planning, you never know when these things could strike. Is it good for Ollie to get this experience? Is it good for the team to be playing under a different captain? Because you never know what's going to happen in the future.
No, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and no, it's just a great opportunity for Ollie to do it this week. I'm not sure what they're thinking long term, to be honest. It's something that I'm not necessarily part of at the moment. But yeah, I think Ollie's just going to focus on this week, and then what will be in the next 12 months.
Just finally, family around for this week?
Yeah, I'll have the old man in, and I'm sure my brothers will come down to watch as well. So yeah, it should be a really fun week.
Is your dad giving you some tips?
No, certainly not. No. I'm sure he'll be wishing me well, but I won't be listening too much for some cricket tips. No. Good luck. Thank you very much.
That's Dan Lawrence chatting to Stefan Schemmel or Paul Farbrace. Dan Lawrence at the top of the order. He's not played for England for quite some time. He's been there waiting patiently as the spare batter for what feels like has been about sort of 2.5 years, but he gets his chance.
He thoroughly deserves his chance as well. Do you know the thing that I really like about him? Every time I hear him talk, and whenever I hear him talking about the game, he always sounds very calm, very level-headed, which as an opening batsman you've got to be. And the other thing that I really like about his technique, he's not a big offside player. And I think as an opening batsman, that will play nicely as to not wanting to chase balls and score outside off stump. He'll be very much letting the ball come to him and score through the leg side. And I actually quite like that. I think that technique will allow him to settle very quickly and very nicely into the role as the opening batter.
Stephen, what does he bring to this side? Because he's clearly a very talented player. He's moved from Essex to Surrey. He had an opportunity at the top of the order earlier this year for Surrey and got a 50. What sort of player is he going to be? More in the Zach Crawley mould, that aggressive opener?
Yeah, certainly he'll be aggressive. He'll look to impose himself on the game. As Fav's mentioned, he does hit the ball in strange areas. He plays very much towards the leg side the whole time. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes against this ball that may just move a little bit more. You talk about Ben Duckett and Crawley being aggressive players at the top of the order, but they do play with the full face of the bat a lot of the time, which means that they can get away with things when you're closing the face on it. It can just make it that little bit more tricky. But in terms of a mentality, he's a winner. And you want those guys in your team. He's won a couple of championships with Essex. He's well on the way to winning a championship with Surrey this year at the top of the First Division. And you want those guys who are playing in good teams and can ride off the confidence of that when you're picking them to go and play in international cricket. He had a lean 100, I think it's fair to say. He averaged 14 batting near the top of the order in the 100, but maybe a change of format will do him some good on tomorrow or Wednesday.
Alex, when he was at 3 in India in 2021, averaged 25. He's a player that clearly has got a lot of ability, but opening and being at the top of the order is a real change. It is different.
Yeah, of course it is. I think, he's going to just he's going to have to try and find a way and settle into it, isn't he? But we know how aggressive England have been at the top of the order, and I actually think he'll fit that role really well. Him and Duckett will look to take the ball on. They'll look to put the bowlers under pressure. And for England, also it's a bit of a free rein for him, really, isn't it? Sorry for Dan Lawrence. Just go out there, score some runs. And, he said he wasn't looking too far into the future. But in the back of your mind, there is always that what if. What if I perform? What if I score back-to-back hundreds? What if I get a double 100? That's going to be there. If he does do that, he does sort of become undroppable. And then where do you play him? Because we know that Duckett and Crawley at the top of the order have had so much success as well. So if he does well, it's going to be a huge headache. But also for him, it's now just a bit of freedom to go out there and have some fun.
Do you think Brendan McCullum-Paul will be saying that to him? Go out there, have some fun, and it's almost an unspoken thing that if you perform well, you are going to cause headaches for the coaches.
100%, and I think Alex is absolutely right. It is a great opportunity for him just to go out and play. And I'm sure the conversation when he was told he was opening would have been, you got nothing to lose, everything to gain. And very impressive the way he spoke about, I'm not bothered about future selection. All I'm bothered about is showing that I can play international cricket. And I think that the fact that he is so versatile, that he's got such a good technique, is very calm and level-headed, I think he will be doing exactly as Alex said. Go and play with freedom, go and play with fun. And that's exactly what this England team have allowed everyone to do. And it's no surprise when people have come into the team that debutants have just looked at home. And that's the biggest compliment you can pay this England setup, is that every debutant that's come in just looks at home. And they look very comfortable, and they play how they've been playing for their county. And probably a little bit more aggressive than perhaps they've been playing for their county, which is great.
Let's have a little bit more of a chat thinking about England's opponent, Sri Lanka. First Test series in England since 2016. England won that series 3 matches, but they won it by 2 matches to 0. And we can chat to the former Sri Lanka all-rounder Russell Arnold, who are going to be part of our team on Test Match Special this week. Russell, lovely to have you with us. Lovely to have you in the country.
Good evening, guys. Yes, nice to be back here. It's always a special place, playing cricket, watching cricket, and also talking cricket. So thanks for having me.
It's been far too long, 8 years. It's a long old time since the Sri Lanka side came here on a test tour.
It sure has. We've got to go 10 years to record a Sri Lankan win with a home and away. I think there's been 8 test matches played. The last so many test matches, even in the spinning conditions in Sri Lanka, England have been dominant. They've had the upper hand. But I don't think the two teams have come together after England's new approach, you got to say, the intimidating approach that they bring to cricket.
I'm intrigued by this Sri Lanka side because there's some big-name players, Russell, who okay, look, it's not the Mahela Jayawardene, Kumar Sangakkara of years gone by, but there are some very talented players in that squad. I mean, this is probably as strong a squad as could have been sent over from the options available.
I think it's Sri Lanka's best team or best set of players for Test cricket. You are right when you say there's a lot of experience. There's Dimuth Karunaratne, Dinesh Chandimal, Angelo Matthews, who have played heaps and heaps of cricket. And also here in England, Sri Lanka's Test team has done a lot better than what the white ball team has done in the recent past. But the bowling options, there are some the Fernandos, as you may say, that will be leading the attack. But in these conditions, it's a fresh experience for them. It'll all come down to holding your nerve and be able to execute your skills. I reckon start the series strong. Get England thinking about their game at certain stages, which might only work for them.
Yeah, Russell, I absolutely agree with you there. I think it is the best squad, and obviously you know them very well. I think it's the best squad. Your point about Chandimal, Kunaratne, Matthews, that there's so much experience in the team. And a lot of people have talked about the comparison between the West Indies team that came and played earlier in the summer, now the Sri Lankans. This Sri Lankan team will score runs in England. And that's the one big thing that, whilst the bowling attack might be a little bit newer to English conditions, the batting order have done very well. Angelo loves playing against England in England. He gets a lot of runs in England. You know, he's got a great technique. You know, Dimuth, excellent at the top of the innings. I think Sri Lanka will cause England a few problems in this series. I think it's going to be a lot closer and a lot tougher series. And as you said, Russell, I think, you know, the experience they've got in the team of playing in England, doing well in England, is something that perhaps the West Indies didn't have, that this Sri Lankan team will definitely have.
Steve, we mentioned some of those names. It is names that you were playing against 8-10 years ago.
Yeah, and like Fob says, they've had good experiences here, and that counts for a lot, actually. When you're selecting a team and you're looking for senior players to include, you want guys who've had good experiences playing in those conditions, and a lot of those batters have. And they're exciting. They're an exciting batting unit. I'm fascinated to see how their bowling unit comes up against this England batting lineup, because when you're playing against a team that are aggressive in the manner that England are, it can put you on the back foot and just derail you a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how these less experienced bowlers deal with that. But certainly in and amongst that batting lineup, there's a lot of experience. That, I think, is a nod to why England have picked the extra bowler through this Test series, because they'll be slightly worried about the damage that top order could do.
Russell, who's going to be the threat with the ball for Sri Lanka?
Well, you'd like to think that it'll be Vishwa Fernando, the left arm, who does tend to move the ball, whether it be the new ball or the old ball. He's not as quick because he's not in the 140, but in the 130s. He gets to you a little quicker than you expect. One of those type of bowlers. You'd like to see him move that ball. He's just played a few county games recently, and hopefully that experience will hold him well. You'd think Prabhat Jayasuriya, the left-arm spinner, he's done so well. We call him the Goldozer because most of his wickets have come down in goal. But I would think if Vishwa Fernando can come into his own, get those early breakthroughs, that's when Sri Lanka can sneak ahead.
Alex, when we saw the fixtures for this summer, I think there was a lot of people that thought, well, it'll be 3-0 against West Indies and 3-0 against Sri Lanka. Yeah, the West Indies series went England's way, and there were moments for West Indies across those matches. But I think this Sri Lanka side, I think it could be a really interesting series, this.
Yeah, me too. I think actually Sri Lanka now, they could probably have that bit between their teeth and prove us all wrong, couldn't they? Go out there and prove a point. Can you get a first innings lead? Can you get England under pressure? We know that this England side can collapse. We've seen it happen. You've just got to be able to absorb that pressure. And I think now for Sri Lanka, it's a huge opportunity to upset the apple cart and actually come away with a win. They might not win the series, don't get me wrong, England might, but we don't know until we've seen them play. Yes, we've seen them play their warm-up games, but we don't know how they're going to turn up at Old Trafford. I mean, I'm currently 2 minutes from the ground and it's hammering it down, but we'll ignore the weather. Hopefully that doesn't get in the way, but I think it's a free shot for Sri Lanka to just go out there and really show what they've worked on since they were last here and since England last played against them, and they have a huge opportunity to go out and have some fun.
Paul, 2014, they memorably won that game at Headingley right at the end. Jimmy Anderson getting out, I think, to the penultimate ball of the Test match. And so those memories, the likes of Angelo Matthews would have been part of that squad and leading that team. They do have plenty to draw upon, and getting a result here would be huge.
Yeah, it would. And that, that series was a bittersweet series for me because I just left Sri Lanka, and that was the first series after I'd left the Sri Lankan team. I passed Damika Prasad, who bowled brilliantly at Headingley, on the stairs at Headingley on day 3, and he said, "Coach, something's not right." And I said, "Damika, I can't help you. I'm on the other side." But we did have a bit of a chat that evening, and he got 5 in the next innings, and they won the game. It was the penultimate ball, and I was delighted for them winning England. I hated losing, but I was delighted for them because there were so many good players in that team, and you're quite right. A lot of them are back in this group. That they are, and as I say, they've got experience of winning in England. They know what it's like, and with Sanath Jayasuriya in charge at the moment, they look like they've had a bit of a turnaround. And anyone that we talk about Bazball, crikey, Sanath was probably the master of taking the game to the opposition. He's an absolute fighter. He'll be desperate to win. And this is his chance to show people in Sri Lanka that he can get the Sri Lankan team winning. So in terms of motivation and fire and fight, this is a great time for Sri Lanka to be in England, and a great time with the pitches being good pitches at this time of the year for their batters to bat freely on as well. So, I think they will win the Test match, and I think they'll push England very close in this series.
Russell, there's a big smile on your face when you hear Paul speaking about Jayasuriya and the way that he approaches things. I mean, how much of an impact is that going to have? Are we going to see the likes of Chandimal and Matthews really sort of letting loose and playing with that freedom, do you think?
You'd hope so. They will have to. And when you talk about Jayasuriya, he's got his own style. And I was trying to add to what Paul was saying. Jayasuriya speaks the language, and he's pretty blunt with what he'll have to tell the players. But there will not be any communication gap. Now, Paul will agree that's a challenge that a lot of foreign coaches tend to have a bunch, how to get the message across. It's because not many speak English. So it's always that little gap that does exist. But with Jayasuriya, that doesn't. And it just seems to be going down very well.